Hello everyone, and welcome back to Talking Points with KPI, episode number 39. Today is not a blog-style podcast, so you cannot go in deeper, but if you do want to see the blogs previous, go to kpimh.com, visit the blog tab, they'll be right underneath. Today, we are going over the KPI assessments. So if you come in a new-time athlete, you will get assessed by either any of the coaches in the facility. I'm going to have them go over what it is right now.
I'll start.
Yep.
I guess the best probably way to provide context on this is when it comes to baseball player, softball player development, for the most part, they go to skill development first. So I want to improve my swing, I want to improve my mechanics, I want to improve my throwing, my pitching. A pitching coach, a hitting coach, now they're on the softball side, there are throwing coaches working on throwing too. They will take video and say, okay, here's what you're going to work on today. A typical hitting session or a lesson, you're going to, warm up, which just kind of takes some swings off the tee. You're going to hit a little front toss, and the coach is, all right, here's the drills we're going to do today. Pitching, all right, warm up, do your arm care, because that's starting to become more regular for kids. We're going to go through some drill work, and then we're going to get on the bump, and we're going to throw a bullpen, and we're going to work on a curveball. The biggest problem, especially for our youth athletes, when I say youth, 10 to 18, if you do not take into account, first and foremost, physically how they're built, and then secondarily to that, how they move, and having that fundamental understanding, the compensations or the poor mechanics that you're going to see will likely continue to show up. And I like putting it this way because this is the cop-out that every parent and coach uses. Kid goes to games, I worked on my swing, it's dialed, my mechanics are, I'm doing my curveball's really good, and you go back to games and you suck. You're falling back to your old habits. We need to break these habits. You need to address some of these physical limitations. We need to address some of these movement compensations. And I think the third bucket is if you've ever been injured, we need to address that too. Because injury is going to change the way you move. It's going to change your form, literally how you're built. And we need to take that into account too. And if we do not have that understanding, then our skill coaches are all going to be limited because you're first and foremost either asking somebody to do something that they physically cannot do for whatever limitation, or they're not built to do. And if you ask somebody to do something that they're not built to do, the likelihood of injury goes up. So this process really started with one of my old jobs. The director of strength there, BRX Performance, he had interned for Erik and I was extremely lucky to learn from him the assessment process that they used when he was there. And then there's an online webinar that you can go through and learn all of his assessment process. From there, it has evolved first and foremost to trying to bridge the gap to skill. So the next place that I tapped into was On Base U, and integrating some of their screens, trying to look at, okay, hey, I can understand shoulder range of motion or hip range of motion or spine range of motion, but I need to know how this is going to affect the ability to swing and throw. And then ultimately, I wouldn't say it's our finished product, but what we're doing today from an assessment process is the most comprehensive that we've ever done. And I think the reason it's the most comprehensive is that we have that foundation. Here's how you're built, here's how you move using our force plates. Once we know those two things, then we're going to look at how you perform. Once we understand how you perform, we connect the dots. We are starting to see a lot of trends, and we'll go over those trends today. But again, it's this process is something that we're continuing to find better ways to do it, and we're trying to make it as objective as possible. I think that's probably the ultimate goal of this entire process. Is it's not what we think, it's not what we believe. I say that to a lot of families where it needs to be objective. It needs to be data. It needs to be a number that we can quantify, and then we can retest over and over again. And we're testing that right now. This is the first time we've had more coaches outside of myself doing assessments. And so we're hopefully going to end up having, and we will, have the similar findings, and we'll get the similar results for those athletes. And I think taking that into account as we scale and grow, we need this process to be very, very objective so that we can have a lot of coaches run it versus like, oh, I think his shoulder's tight. Oh, I think that his hands are dropping when he's swinging. Oh, I think that his arm is like getting up into his arm slot. Well, we need to make this objective so that we can make sure that if we are using the same drills and exercises and all that, then we're across the board on the same page.
Before we get into the skill sides of things, Erik, I want to talk to you about so coming in. Obviously, there's a parent-kid connect when they first come in. Seeing them go through an assessment, how do you see that change their idea of what KPI is compared to come in, get your lesson, then leave?
Well, even though obviously it's the right way to start a program,
Yeah.
Is to get assessed individually. It is certainly a very unique thing and not the norm in this industry. And Dan described what the norm was.
Yeah.
When you show up for a lesson, you just do a couple blah things and then you hop into your skill work. So when we sit down and talk with families about injury history, goals, and then we get out here on the table and then we do a mobility screen and then we explain that to them and we look for different trends, we look for different patterns. We talk to them about how, hey, this could apply to the field here. And then we get on the force plates and we talk about how the central nervous system is wiring. You just see them light up because this is how it's supposed to be. I think that's a big thing. And a lot of times people walk in that door and they don't know what they're going to get in this assessment, even though we do a pretty good job on the front end trying to prepare them for that. They just haven't experienced it before, so it's an unknown for them.
Yeah.
And when we can start at a very elementary baseline level, connect the dots for them at the beginning of the assessment process, and then we get much more deeper as we gather more data in here.
Yeah.
I think it's a revelation for them that they're able to this is cool, and this is really, I'm gonna get what I need as an individual, not what whatever that lesson guide decides the drills are that day.
It also brings them a sense of security too. Like, my child's going to be in a safe place where they're not just letting him do whatever he wants unsupervised.
That's a good point too. Like in the lesson culture, how many times as a parent do you get to sit down with an hour and talk to the coach that's going to be working with your kid
and go through the whole facility?
And that's what happens on our assessment. We sit down for an hour and hour and a half sometimes, and we conversate and we go over things. And I think it really reassures parents that this is the right thing.
Absolutely. So now, tying it into the skills guide with obviously the pitching director and the hitting director, whoever wants to go first, but I want you guys to talk about the first time, obviously, having an assessment come into either a pitching and skill side and hitting side is huge. Talk about how not only did the kids gravitate towards that, but how you guys were able to gravitate towards that yourself.
Yeah, I mean, the process we do right now, right, is the athlete gets that physical assessment, and then their first session is we do a mechanical assessment as well as like a drill assessment. So, and the cool thing about this, I think, like for the future, is it incentivizes athletes to not only get better at their skill, but also get better at the things that are going to make them better at their skill. So things that they do in the weight room, things that they do in arm care, things like that. If we're able to tie how important doing your hip mobility is to how your lead leg block is, like those type of things, the more we can put the dots into place and attach those things, the more an athlete gets bought in to that process. Yeah. I think that's a pivotal part in how we're doing things, especially on the pitching side. And then second to that is we're able to get, I guess, a concrete plan to follow up front. And then if things either progress or regress, we can have a stepping stone or things to look back on to then adjust from there.
Yeah.
Which is something we really haven't had in the past, but now that we have this, it's going to be, I think, a big changing.
So I'm going to cut you off, but Dan, I have a question for you. So he brought up the fact that they get to see these objective numbers now off of the assessment. Have you also seen an increase in kids being like, oh, that's cool, because they get to mentally see those numbers, and now they can make it, like we always talk about, a gamification to themselves? So how have you seen them take to that?
Well, I think the part is that buy-in, the trust piece goes up.
Yeah.
Because for the most part, until relatively, last year or so, since we had the force plates, the physical assessment is hard to quantify. It takes a little bit of trust when it say, hey, you're limited in this range of motion, or this muscle or this area is weak. Yeah. It's going to likely cause you to roll over. And then kids will be thinking or some kids oh yeah, no, I have that problem all the time.
Yeah.
So there is this kind of that leap of faith that had to be made. And then a little bit of selling on my part that hey, yeah, I've seen athletes that have really poor spine mobility to their glove side. Yeah. Here's the things we can potentially see mechanically.
Yes.
And then you send them over to the pitching coach or you send them to the hitting coach, and you're like, yeah, that's what I see.
Yeah.
We did this all the time with K-Vest. Have a kid swing with K-Vest, and then he'd send them to me and say, there's something going on with the power, the speed transfer from their pelvis to the torso. Let's look at that.
Yeah.
And then vice versa. This guy's really locked up on his front hip when he's hitting. Is there, see if there's anything you can address there. So I think that's the connection piece, and then again putting data to it, I think is good, because then again it gives them, and this is one of our knocks that we get from our current clients is I got assessed once, and then I don't really see, am I getting better, am I getting worse?
Yeah.
And I think a capacity issue that we had when it was just the two of us was we just had to rely on, if kids are running faster, throwing hard, hitting the ball harder, it's working. And a lot of kids
healthy.
did. Yeah, healthy too, right? I think now we're going to be able to, with our staff, be able to get even more granular and say, okay, here's exactly why this worked. Here's exactly this drill. And then the more that we can do that, the more we can expedite this process of kids getting better and obviously reduce the chances of getting injured.
And on that point, to piggyback a little bit, what Justin was saying is the way we connect the dots with the assessments from the physical side to the skill side. So after Dan or I or Chase gives an assessment, Justin made an awesome almost checklist for the assessment of a scoring system. We take that PDF, we send it to the entire staff with notes on it. They have health notes on their profiles, goals, so everyone in our entire facility can see exactly how that kid anatomically is biased, what his force plates say, what his goals are, what his injury history are, and they're able to kind of get that information instantaneously, and they can apply that right away on the skill side, which is it's kind of a testament to the systems we've built in here.
Absolutely. And so now I'll tie into you, Chase. So having your strength background and also having a hitting background already has given you an advantage with your hitting program. But now adding a whole other piece at the front half of that with the assessments, talk about how that's just changed the game.
It just kind of gets into the fact of you take the pride out of it on not what I think your swing should be. Yeah. It's what can your swing be.
What physically can you do?
What can it's the same thing of stay back or stop landing on your front side or whatever. There are reasons a lot of times for these things. I have more range of motion, less range of motion somewhere else, and so instead of beating my head into the ground, trying to get your swing to look the way that I need it to look. It's understanding okay, here are the staples that we need, and then what can your body do that fits into those staples, and that allows us to then build the swing based on get the most out of your body. That's going to be different than Dan and Justin and Erik and all that stuff, and that matters, right? And the whole goal is to be able to understand the full puzzle so we can get the most output as possible and be as precise as possible. Hitting's hard enough. We want to make things simple. But half that battle is you've just learned how to do things a certain way for so long, and now we're going to take this the house that's built and we're going to rearrange it as necessary to make sure that you're getting the most out of it.
So you mentioned it a little bit, but I want to piggyback it. We talked about it before on podcasts about the brotherhood and how people struggle in a whole together here, and it's not just okay, I'm crap today, but my hitting coach says it was okay. They actually struggle together. And talk about how that assessment process and that individualization has given them each thing to work on and kind of made them come together in a sense, and how you've seen that kind of form.
It's funny. It's something that kind of happened organically in regards to the kids actually starting to communicate on what they're working on and all this stuff. This happened last night to where a super young kid PR'd at 70 miles an hour, and the kids were fired up for him. And, that's a big deal. And for him, he's got a lot to work on. But then you're rooting for him, even though another kid hit 95 and that was his PR, right? It's those things of being able to compete but struggle together and understand that everybody has different issues that we need to solve. Everybody has different things, different goals, and it's kind of everybody understands that, and we all just get in and we grind together.
Yeah. I want to cut you off right there. Yeah. The goal piece, I think that's really important, and it gets a little bit over the physical assessment, the tech, and the numbers, the data, all that. If we have no clue where you want to go, then we can't build a plan around that.
True.
And when I say where you want to go, it's not where your coach or your parent or your grandparent or somebody else. We make a pretty strong push to say, hey, what do you want as the athlete? If that's, I want to be a varsity baseball player for my high school team and start, great. I want to be a professional baseball player one day, great. We'll build the plan.
Yep.
Both those things are going to require X number, amount of work. You're going to need to address these weaknesses and build these strengths.
Yeah.
But if we have no clue where what your goals are, or if your goals are ambiguous, I want to be a better baseball player. I want to be a better hitter. I want to be a better softball player. We need to quantify. We need to gamify and say, okay, all right, that's great. You want to play professional baseball one day. Okay, here are the numbers we know that these athletes do. Most professional baseball players weigh around 200 pounds. You weigh 120, got some work to do. Most professional pitchers throw 90 to 95 miles an hour. You probably need to throw that hard if you want a shot playing professional baseball. The majority of hitters can hit the ball 90 to 100 miles an hour. Yeah. We can quantify your goals and make it more motivating, because I think I hit this a lot with our goal setting. For the most part, the goal setting component for baseball is created and turned into a moving target because it's so subjective. It's always relative to who you're playing around. So I want to be a better baseball player. Well, then go play for a crappier team.
Yeah.
Don't go to the private Catholic school where everyone's really, really good. Go to your public school. You'll instantly be a better baseball player because the talent's not as good. Go to the Midwest where there isn't as much baseball talent. Like, you want to be the fastest kid on the team? Oh, okay. Go to a team that's got a bunch of slow kids. Like, it's that moving target is created and done, and the reason it's made that way is so that you continually have to go back and pay for more lessons and pay for more coaching and pay for that guru, that person to give you the unlock or the 6 easy steps or the 8-week program.
Fix you.
Yes, that you're broken and we got to fix you. That's very common on the softball side. We have seen, and we have 2 teams that we partnered with on the softball front. The girls are having a ton of success on the field, and it's more so all of them had good swings. They just needed to get stronger. And we couldn't just make them strong and then not work on their skill work. We needed to do both to make sure that it actually is playing, and it is. And I think I didn't want to gloss over the goal component because that's a really important part of our process.
I think the goal component allows us to understand intent, and so it's like a few of the goals that I've got for the summer for some of these kids are like, I don't know if I could reach that, and I'm like, well, then work like we're trying to get
the
there.
point.
Right?
Yeah.
That's exactly
That's why
the
it's
whole
your
reason,
goal.
and then you kind of get into the pain point of what's going to motivate them to keep going, and then with the assessment and all the things that go into understanding the full puzzle of each player, then they actually understand the roadmap or the path that it's going to take to get there, and it makes it easier to work hard. I don't have to wonder what I need to do. I have it all in front of me, and we have the resources of all of us to be able to get them to take the next few steps while they make big strides in their skill development.
And it allows us to really, like Chase said, like get a good look mentally under their hood. We do a good job of looking physically. Like, I had an assessment on Sunday, and I asked the kid, hey, what's your long-term goals? And he goes, I want to be the greatest baseball player of all time. And I was like, whoa. But I was like, I think I cracked the biggest smile ever. And I was like, all right, let's do this, So like it really kind of, it allows us, and it just plays with the holistic, approach we have in here. That like we're gonna work on all of this. We're not just gonna work on your left hip internal rotation. We're gonna work on you as an athlete.
Yeah, no, I think piggybacking a little bit on what Chase said, but like setting those goals allow for us to get more buy-in right away.
For sure.
And then it allows us to get more granular with those goals. I know when we first started the pitching program, a lot of times like you want to give like 5 to 10 goals right away. And a lot of times with the athletes we deal with, like that's too much. The assessment process, I think, is allowed for us to kind of take baby steps along that and set short-term goals that inevitably might lead to long-term. And then we evaluate along that roadmap. Right, like Dan said, like setting, college guys throwing low 90s. Like if you're 85 as a sophomore, that's a good short-term goal to be in, and then the long-term goal is to maybe add a third pitch because that's also what's in the process. But trying to do that early on might confuse an athlete or something that. So I think this is a really good process to dumb it down a little bit.
Yeah, I think the one thing, and I do want to go into some of like the tangible. We're not going to give away everything that we do, but we'll hit some pain points that I think we hear very common on the pitching and hitting side. The only thing that we promise with this whole process is we will be that positive force. We will be the person saying you can do this. I think a lot of kids, the reason they enjoy coming to our facility is first and foremost, I have a plan. Secondary to that, I have a way of knowing if I'm getting better or worse based on this plan. And then third is I'm surrounded by other people, players and coaches who say, hey, you can do this. Because that kid and that kid and that kid and that kid, they did. And there's no reason that you can't. Versus your experience, just take travel ball and high school ball. Sports in general, society in general is extremely negative.
Sure.
They're going to tell you, your buddies are going to tell you, you are too short, fat, tall, short. You wear glasses, your feet are flat, whatever. I don't know, just weird stuff that I've heard from families. Are like, oh, this coach told me there's no way I could do this because of this reason. And I think the reason that this is a massive pain point for families is when somebody sets big goals. I want to be the greatest baseball player of all time. Instantly, we go inside and go, man, I used to have goals. I used to have big goals like that. I didn't achieve any of them. I feel bad about myself. I'm gonna make you feel bad. There's no way. Good luck. Or you do like the awkward laugh. Oh God, yeah, that sounds good. Let's do it. Like, we make a point to look that kid in the eyes and the parents in the eyes. Like, let's do this. This is what we want to do. If you want to put in the work and the effort and do everything that you need to do to achieve these goals, we will assess as much as we need. Every single time you come in here, you're going to get assessed. Whether it's our force plates or our drills or our exercises or our data collection, we are assessing you all of the time. And we're using that information to figure out, are you getting closer to your goals or are you getting further away?
Yeah. So now, kind of like we always used to talk about, like our whole main goal is to bridge every gap within athletics and all that kinds of stuff. So with the new hire, Nick, our PT, talk about the future of the assessment, whether it's with him or with all of us. Talk about how that looks in the future.
I think there's a couple of different ways we can go with this, because we're really just scratching the surface on what this assessment process will be. Like Dan said, we're pretty good at it and we've refined it, but I think there's definitely some action steps. So on the point of Nick, like having that extra person that has a really professional view of the anatomy and how the body systems work and stuff like that, and getting his input on the assessment process, or maybe he's going to do a really in-depth injury analysis, past injury analysis, mobility screen and how it can affect things. Like letting him get into that process, I think is going to scratch the surface there. And then we've done it a lot organically. We haven't done it a ton officially, but the advanced assessment that we can offer, where we do along with the physical side, just a really in-depth initial skill side analysis, whether it's pitching or hitting, having that as an official product. Really the bottleneck in here is just our staff and our building is just so impacted all the time. So carving out time where we can do an advanced assessment, maybe spend multiple hours or even a couple days with someone that's really looking for something really in depth. I think those are logical next steps for us.
Yeah.
I want to just athletic trainer, just so that there's no confusion. So
it's an
AT, not a PT.
Yes.
It's more for those professionals.
You got it.
The bickering that goes on.
He's an 18.
I view it like, for the most part, I want our assessment process. I'm going to use an analogy right here, so everyone bear with me. Like an X-ray, we can get some good information with our initial assessment, our general assessment. Nick's expertise and what he brings to the table is almost like the level of an MRI. And we can point that MRI to the pain point. If it is your hip, he can dive in and spend, okay, hey, we've taken care of everything else. This is a pain point. We need to figure out what exactly is going on right here, or the shoulder, the elbow, whatever it may be. He can serve as that next layer. Another analogy is like a scalpel. Like, hey, we did our assessment. Something's going on here. You now are going to go in and figure out, okay, what's the fastest way that we can fix this? Oh, they just need a mobility every single day? Great. Or, hey, they need to come and see me, and I'm going to treat them and give them more in-depth modalities that are going to get a faster and safer improvement in this area. And that's kind of, I view his role of just being, again, that next layer and a way more in-depth layer. And I think it'll also meet the needs of the really talented athletes we have in this building. Like, majority of the kids that come in here, the general assessment is great. A great place to start. I'm a freshman in high school. I got a lot of time. If you were a freshman, sophomore, junior, and you throw 90, 95, like, we were going to go way more in depth, and we do. We currently go way more in depth with those athletes, but then they're instantly going to see Nick, and we're going to get as much information as we can, because we need to be very, very specific with that population, and we're starting to get way more guys that fall into that category.
Sure.
Some real quick, I think some future applications, referring back to like some old blogs, like the 2-year player review. I think as we get more objective with the assessment, we can start picking up on trends like with youth athletes to adolescent to college, and understand like when we assessing an athlete and we put them into a drill or something like that, like how the adaptations, the physical adaptations change from assessment to reassessment, and then get more of a picture there so that when an athlete is assessed, we can have a better roadmap for the future athletes that we do have, I guess.
Yeah. I think I'm going to steal over the MC for a second. Let's go one or maybe two each of like, I see this on the pitching side, I see this on the hitting side, a mechanical flaw, and then we'll just talk about maybe some of the physical and or movement or force deficiencies that we see connected with this. Yeah.
I think the hitting side is pretty straightforward. I brought it up earlier, but like the whole like, stay back thing. And it's like we've talked about before, when you don't have the range of motion in your hip to actually stay back, then we have to adjust where you're at mechanically to get you a better position to actually be in an advantageous position to hold yourself back, as opposed to just saying stay back, things like that. Gotcha. That's a big one. That's usually like what we hear, or at least what I hear on, like for the most part on the hitting side. And I think really the next one is like, I'm just gonna stick to the lower half because it's easiest. Is the opposite side of that, of you need a stronger front side. You need a stronger front side. And a lot of times that has, like, I have too much range of motion on my front side. And so the reason why I'm on that is because I'm trying to get into it. Yeah. Right? I need to throw on the brakes. I have a lot of room to go. And then all of a sudden, like, I'm on my front side all the time. So stay back or stronger front side, like, that cue doesn't fix it. Yeah.
Yes,
we have to understand that there's a physical side that goes into that.
So on the physical side, what we see for the back hip is typically the inability to internally rotate. Really easy example of this would be if I'm standing and I squat and I put my feet together like this and I squat down, I'm internally rotating at the pelvis as I go down. And so if I don't have that range of motion, when I go to load my back hip, I'm going to get in and out of it very quickly. Yeah. And that's going to cause me to get to my front side too early. And so if you lack hip internal on your backside, which is extremely common because that is an adaptation we want more external rotation on our back hip because that gets us more rotational power. Yeah. We need enough internal rotation to make sure we give ourselves enough time to be on time with the rest of our body. And so, pretty straightforward. The other side, and the same adaptation, is because when we hit, we're always rotating, for the most part, unless you're a switch hitter, right to our left as a right-handed hitter, we're going to gain internal rotation on our front hip. And if we gain too much of it and we don't have strength there, then even when we try to throw the brakes on, we're not going to be able to do it. And then the final piece, I think, from the movement side of things, from what we've seen with the force plates, there are some athletes that just cannot help themselves but put their foot on the gas. Yeah. And once they put their foot on the gas, they have no clue how to throw the brakes on. And then the car is moving, and you're going to be not staying back, and you're not going to have a strong front side. And so we're starting to connect the dots even more so using our force plates, where you have the structure of your car, your body, is going to lead to these compensations. Yeah. The way you move and your wiring is also going to lead to these compensations. If they both lead to the same compensations, we're in some trouble. We need to address it on both sides, and it makes sense. Form serves function, function serves form, and so we're going to see that.
On the pitching side, the main one I've seen is like the fly open with the glove side, or like the torso flying open. And most of the time, and what we've seen, it comes from two things. It's a lack of stability in the pelvis and the spine. It could be sometimes like an arm action piece where they have to fly open to get that space. But a lot of times it's just I extend with the spine, I anterior tilt with this pelvis, and now I can't rotate, so I have to fly open and pull everything through. Especially youth athletes that we know have to use momentum as much as they can. Yeah. And telling them to stay close is probably not going to fix that problem. Yeah. Right? And so, and then I guess the other one we've seen a lot of times is like arm path, or the way that the arm retracts behind the body. Youth athletes tend to get very overextended and they tend to cast. And the reason for that is mostly due to lack of strength in the shoulder and the scap. So they have to use as much space and momentum to get that ball up. And a lot of times that just puts the shoulder and the elbow in an disadvantageous position for it to move efficiently.
So real quick, for the flying open piece, this is a really, really common one. I get told I need to stay closed longer. A lot of times from a physical standpoint, we'll look at the pelvis for sure. An on-base use screen is the pelvic tilt and rotation test. Most kids, like even I, suck at the pelvic tilt and test. Yeah. You like having pelvis control, controlling the center of my body is extremely important. Anybody under the age of 18 will typically suck at it. Yep. And the reason is we, number one, aren't taught. Number two, like there's no physical education. There is no PE. There is no playing with your buddies. Yeah. You go to school, you go to tutoring or baseball practice or sport practice, and then you go home and you do homework, and then you watch TV and play video games. Yeah. You literally are sitting around doing nothing. So if we don't use that and we don't learn how to control it, then we're going to have problems. Extremely common and an easy screen to say, hey, you have no clue how to control your pelvis in the simplest way of you're just standing here and moving it and rotating it. Okay, we need to improve that. And they have built out a lot of systems to attack that. And we're currently implementing that with our youth programs because it's that important. And pitchers on the youth side have been having a ton of success. The other part of the fly open, we'll talk about the arms getting long. Arm can get long because it gets coached into them. Yeah. Hey, you need to reach back further because the further you reach back, the harder you throw.
Or is it to feed the elephant or feed the?
I've always gone to the point the ball back to second base deal, but it's a rudimentary, it's a 2D understanding of a 3D movement. Yeah. And so when you tell a kid to enlarge or make their movements bigger and they have poor control, we're going to have problems. As they get older, what's common to see, because we always rotate from our right to our left, is we lose rotation to our right side, to our dominant side. And because I don't have that mobility, that ability to get to that position, I'm going to use my arm to get that and get into that rearwardly stacked, that closed position, which again, like you said, we use momentum, especially on the mound, we're going to have problems. Yeah.
And the issues that the guys just brought up there, those are perfect examples of what's wrong with the lesson and team environment at the highest levels. And I'm talking all the way up the chain. If we have a hitter that we see can't stay back, and I'm the hitting coach, and I see that he doesn't stay back, and I tell him, hey, stay back, or get into your backside, but you don't understand how the body is orientated, you're not going to help him at all. It's either a physical issue that needs to be addressed in the training room. It's a mechanical issue that needs to be addressed with movement patterning, or a lot of times it's a mental issue. A lot of times the brain blocks certain movements to protect itself. Okay, but if I'm just the field coach, or if I'm just the lesson coach, and I identify the issue, and I'm just telling the player to do it, and I get frustrated because the player can't do it, and then I tell the other coach, you know what, that kid sucks, he doesn't listen to me. All right, no, it's like, no, you suck because you haven't assessed that kid to understand like why his body's doing that.
Yeah. I like it's from the French Bosch book where the body does not care what the coach has to say. Yeah. You can coach and cue and you're blue in the face, and then when it goes competition mode, I'm trying to hit that ball and I'm trying to throw that strike. That's all that my body is organizing to try and achieve and do, and it's going to do it in the path of least resistance or the easiest, not the most efficient or optimal. Yeah. And so when we do the first option, we're probably going to have inconsistent performances and or suck. And then the more likely thing to happen over the course of time is likely to get hurt. So that's our job. Is we want to improve efficiency and improve and get you into an optimal movement, whether it's on the mound or the batter's box, and then battle test it in the facility in game-like environments, and then send you out to the field to go and compete.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. To go full circle on that too, it's like that's the reason why we train the way that we train in here, is because you're gonna, like, the whole point of you're gonna go back to the game, you're gonna go back to old habits.
Yeah.
Well, it's like, well, then we have to train it in a way that allows you to understand the movements that you need to be successful, so then you know what to do when you're on the mound. When you're in that environment and you have to execute, we want these movement patterns to be solidified. Otherwise, you're just going to go back to old habits. Yeah. And you're going to beat your head into the ground as a pitching, hitting coach, strength coach, whatever, right? Like, that's the whole idea. It's the whole reason why we train the way we train.
Yeah, the last thing I'll say is what has been sold is more on-field playing development. You need to play more to get better. The second to sell is, hey, you're not doing well on the field, well, I'll coach you in the skill set. Yeah. But I also write the lineup. So you probably should do these lessons, because I want to make sure that I like the way that you swing or that you throw. The part that gets left out all the time is the physical. Well, it's becoming more popular, but the issue is the person who's trying to take care of these first two things has no expertise in this world, and all they do is condition. We're just going to run you. We're going to do burpees. We're going to do CrossFit.
We're going to make sure you're in shape.
We're going to make you tired, basically. Yeah. But we know fatigue is the enemy of performance. Yeah. And so we are going to flip it on its head. We're going after physical development first. We're applying it to skill development, and then we're seeing if it has success on the field. And the athletes with our partnered programs, we have a line of communication and we have influence what happens on the field, and those athletes are continually having better results and being more successful in the field.
Yeah, you're going to see coming out in the next week or so as the season's wrap up, the amount of athletes we've had do incredible things on the field this spring. It's really remarkable, and it's a testament to them that they've executed the system. It's a testament to their coaches that we have created, and we are creating more and more open lines of communication with coaches of all levels at all different places in Northern California, and the right things happening for those guys.
Yeah. All right. We good? Sweet. Thank you very much, everybody, for listening to Talking Points with KPI episode number 39, which was all about assessments. If you do, like I said, want to go visit the blogs anymore, go to kpimh.com. We'll have the tab above. Please go like and subscribe to the YouTube. Follow all of our socials. Hope you guys have a good day. Thank you for listening.